Well, hi, I'm Jim Bailey, and welcome to Inside View. And our guest for this section, or segment I should say, is our supervisor from District 4, Dennis Mills. Hey, Dennis.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Better than I deserve, I think, sometimes.
And as usual, Dennis and I were chatting away before the show started, and we got some of the interesting stuff out, but not all of it.
Yes.
So just some quick background. Elected in 2016.
To the Board of Supervisors.
To the Board of Supervisors.
In the primary against two opponents.
True.
By a landslide, 58%.
So where District 4, where is District 4 encompass?
Think of where Milton and Lake Hogan is,
okay.
South edge of Lake Hogan, and it goes through to Copperopolis, and then picks up Angels Camp, Vallecito, and then, believe it or not, part of Murphy's Pines.
Murphy's Pines?
That is the area of El Papadero, Darby Lane, French Gulch.
Wow.
Up in that corner up there.
I'll be danged.
Yeah, and yet I don't have 6 Mile Village.
Yeah.
Which is really strange.
What kind of weird gerrymandering turn was that?
Gerrymandered district, absolutely.
Well.
But it happens.
Yes.
So
how are things going since you've been our supervisor for a couple of years now? What's the state of District 4, if I can put it that way?
It's interesting because when I was on the Calaveras County Water District, I was elected in 2014 to that position. Much of the issues that Copperopolis faces, for instance, are very similar in nature. But now we're dealing with the additional components of roads and waste and other matters. But it's generally the same people. So the relationships are already built. And where they have difficulties or there's things that are going on, I'll give you an example of that is Community Services Area 4, which is the Diamond 20 area, has had issues with roads and things going on there, especially with storm damage. So, we get in the middle of it and do what we can to help minimize their need to have that influence.
So you have Bar 20, Diamond 20, and Circle?
I do not have Circle 20. That's in District 1.
So Bar 20 and Diamond.
Bar 20 is interesting because that's both a CSA and a CSD. A community services district is Appaloosa, where Stallion is a community service area. When those areas are actually allowed to have advisory members to keep the board appraised of the situations that are going on.
And speaking of that, one of the things we were talking about earlier was there's 5 supervisors.
Right.
And there's X amount of committees. So
that's interesting.
Everybody gets scattered about, if you would.
We actually are appointed to, right now I was counting 34 boards, commissions, or committees that one supervisor, in some cases 2, sit on those committees. My primary work has been in water. It's just the way it's worked out over the years. So
it dovetails into CCWD,
yeah,
of course.
And I already have the relationships at CCWD and the other water agencies. So I'm working on the Eastern San Joaquin Groundwater Basin Authority, working on CAMRA, which is the Calaveras Amador McCullum River Association, an alternate to the UMRA, which is the Upper McCullum River Association, which encompasses also East Bay Mud and those efforts. So much of what we do is somehow related to water.
Yeah, and that's around here we always get that general question. We want to protect our water rights.
Yes.
But what does that really mean to the regular Joe who lives here?
Thank you.
People say we want to protect our water. It's our water.
It's a broad question.
It is a broad question.
And it can become very difficult to explain. But we have water rights in this county. They're some of the oldest water rights in the state of California. They go back to 1854, 1856. So they predate the 1914 Act. And also they predate the 1888. So when Calaveras Public, for instance, wants to sell water or to do something, in essence, the state almost has no authority over them. We have another one, which is the Utica Project over in Angels Camp.
Right.
And that's an 1856 project. In fact, that was the first electricity that was generated outside of the city of San Francisco was in Angels Camp.
Wow.
And that was the result of the need for the stamping mills and the mining that was going on there at the time. So the entire Utica project was built as a water supply to generate power for the city of Angels Camp.
And that still runs under UPUD, right?
Actually, it's a joint project. The Utica Water Project is Union Public and the City of Angels Camp. Okay. But it also supplies water to that entire area as well, so it's critical. And it's interesting because right now the U.S. Forest Service is working on clearing the area underneath the 3/4-mile flume by Forest Meadows. Remember, we had the Darby fire.
Sure do,
and to prevent that from happening now, there is some proactive steps being taken to reduce that fuel loading underneath that critical area of the flume. And then now the Forest Service is working together with CAL FIRE and developing some additional fuel break areas around Murphy's, around Forest Meadows, going all the way through Avery, and then up behind Arnold in the Meadowmont area.
Is some of that $170 I pay in my fire protection fee?
The fire fee's gone.
Well, taxes.
Yeah, we called it SRA money.
Right. But someone told me today they thought some of that money was hopefully being used to remove some of the dead trees, things of that nature.
It did come back. Okay. Some of it did come back to us in the form of grants for tree removal, both on public and private property. And I also am participating with the Foothill Fire Safe Council, and they're coordinating much of the private piece of that. And they've done a lot of. In fact, their first project was a fuel break outside of Murphy's.
Yeah, we'll take it, believe me.
But grant money, SRA grant money, was used, as well as CDAA, that's California Disaster Assistance money, to do that.
And speaking of money, budgets.
I know, we can go all over the map here.
Budgets are always exciting, you know. I mean, maybe not exciting for you guys, but they're exciting.
It's exciting for me.
Because it's incredibly important, especially in a smaller county, a rural county, where we don't have large commercial tax bases for industry. That we need to keep our budget in line and yet take care of all the things we need to take care of.
And there are services that are considered critical services, and if you realize that much of our budget is driven by federal or state funding, because we're required to do health and human services, and that's the largest department in the county, and the second largest being public works. So the good majority of that money does come from state or federal sources.
And so you run, I'm going to assume you go fiscal July to July.
Correct.
July to the end of June.
Correct.
So we're coming up on the second half of our current budget year.
And strangely enough,
how's it looking?
We were just released. Yeah, the midterm was just released to me this morning, and it's actually looking very good. I mean, if we were saying, do we have a buffer and can we run with what we have? Yeah, I think we're being very fiscally responsible. If we weren't, we wouldn't be maintaining a AA bond rating. Yeah. No. So when we did our last GO bond, which is the redemption that we did on the one for Measure J from the jail.
Right.
We did that in 2016, and that was, I think Moody's or Fitch, one of them came back with a AA rating for that bond sale.
Pretty strong for a
That's actually investment grade. That's just below a AAA. The point is that rating is based upon not only our ability to repay, but our financial stability during the entire term.
So you're saying I should get in on the bond? Is that what you're saying?
If you want stability, yes, bonds is and a lot of you'll see as the markets and stocks go into flux, people will move into bonds as a more stable investment.
This is my discussion I'm going to have with Corey later, based on yesterday's sales.
It's interesting.
The Treasury bonds yesterday were just.
Yes, it's a good example.
A huge
So
number.
when you look at our investment portfolio, which is a combination of all of like districts, school districts, fire districts, et cetera, even the hospital district, we all combine into one investment portfolio. That's been doing very well. And you don't invest money in long term over a year. That's where you want to invest it, right? You don't.
Sure.
If you're going to need to be liquid, you don't want to be putting it out in long-term investments.
Generally, no.
No. So we're doing fairly well in those investments right now.
So something Rick and I talked about earlier on the previous segment was the TOT tax, and I said let's call it a TOT fee. Let's not call it a tax because. The counties had this on the ballot and rejected it a few times.
Yes,
by the voters, and it could be. Rick and I talked about the way to pitch that to the voters.
Well, I can explain it.
Please do, because we were both kind of
okay.
We're hopeful. Go
back into the state and why TOT was even permitted in the first place.
Okay.
It was intended to offset the challenges to the infrastructure result of having transit occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you figure the additional burden on police, on fire, on roads, water,
On
sewer,
everything.
okay, these people are coming and going,
Mm-hmm.
but they really are not truly day-to-day contributors. And so that was really its intention, was to do that. Now we've shifted and taken a good majority of it and pushed it towards advertising and
Mm-hmm.
promoting, et cetera, which is not a negative thing. But if you go to any other community right now, if you get into even Lake Tahoe, look at the TOT tax there.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it down in the Bay Area, what the TOT tax is. We're way short of even our neighboring counties, or even the city of Angels Camp.
Sure.
Angels Camp is
Absolutely.
10%. We're at 6%. Think of what an additional 4%. And the people who live in this county don't pay it. It's visitors who come here that pay it.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Okay.
But I guess the part that is confusing is why are we having such a difficulty delivering that message to our voters? Because it's been turned down, that I can think of, twice since I lived here.
It has been, and it's been turned down. I've been here 40 years, so I kind of.
Why?
I think part of it is that when we put something up as a ballot measure, there needs to be some education that goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the voters are not thoroughly understanding what it is you're trying to do and why,
Right.
they're going to reject it outright. And I don't blame them. I mean, if you tell me, I've got to add 4%, well, whose pocket is it coming from? Or will it negatively impact your tourist industry? I mean, you have to really think about all of those pieces.
I'm pretty confident people will still come.
I would strongly support bringing us up to at least that 10% on the TOT, because recently we also included the fire districts into
Yes, Rick and I
having
talked
a
about that
piece of the
also.
TOT. And I know it primarily, I don't know if the Sheriff's Department took some of the hit, or they felt that they took some of the hit for that. But everybody, I'll give you an example, is if you're around Pardee or Lake Hogan, and your fire district goes out to do a medical aid call out on the lake, who's paying for it? It's the residents who live here, when actually it's transients that are most likely to be the ones. I'll give you an example of that. Is in Copperopolis. If we have a medical aid along the lake, and I'm thinking about upstream of the O'Byrne's Ferry Bridge, you know what they have to do to get that person out of there? Commandeer a boat. They don't even have a way to get them out. So they literally climb the rocks and go bring the person down to the lake, and then find somebody who's willing to loan them a boat to get them out of there. These are the kind of things that we need to look at, and TOT can be a part of that.
Do you think it's possible that come the November election that we could structure some kind of
I'd love to see it.
ballot initiative? And I don't know how it actually gets structured. Is it something that the board of supervisors put on, or is it the individual comes up and says, "Here's a great idea"? It's like an initiative where I'm
the board
getting
can bring
petitions, signatures, or
the board can bring that before the voters for a decision. Yeah, not hard. It just depends upon how we sell it in advance, and the key is that if the voters can see that there is a financial advantage to doing it this way.
Well, framing. I think people get nervous when they hear the word tax.
Yeah, and it
just makes them nervous.
Yeah, when really it's
not a tax.
It's a fee for service.
Fee for service. Right?
It is. Yeah, it's the best way to put it.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
All right, what other exciting things are I done? Oh, someone asked me.
Yeah.
They knew I was coming to see you. Someone asked me, transit issue with Angels Camp.
Yes.
And it's kind of just a statement, not a question.
Well, I'm the one that
So help me here.
Transit has been kind of a stepchild for Public Works for a number of years. At one time, it was operated by COG, the Council of Governments, who is our planning authority within the county, and it is a JPA that works with Angels Camp and the county for that purpose. But it didn't work out well. It was driven primarily by personality. In other words, if you have the right person there at the right time, it's functional and successful. Sure. So it's very easy if you get into a state of transition that it isn't able to fulfill its role well because of timing. So the county took it back about 10 years ago, and it has been a real, to some degree, a burden because it is such a small part of the overall public works budget, and a focus and attention should be on roads, road repair, road maintenance, et cetera, and bridges, et cetera, not really on this. So I think we've taken an inordinate amount of time in public works and staffing to deal with it, and we have to have it. For people to say, well, let's just throw transit out. When you do that, there is other funding that is attached to it. And if you don't meet fare box recovery or you don't provide the service, then the money that was going to go to you goes to someone else. You can make that choice. And then all of a sudden there's other opportunities that go away. So we can't be in that position right now. So are we making the smartest use of the dollars, the transit dollars? That's the conversation. So I'm the one that, if you want to blame somebody for all of this discussion about, having COG take it over as a JPA, and it's a separate entity, legal entity, then this is an opportunity to have that conversation and move it over. So the board agreed with me 5-0 last Tuesday, and last night the Angel City Council agreed 4-1 to go forward with a JPA through COG. And make COG, in essence, work as a separate entity under the JPA to be a transit authority. Now, all of a sudden, the City of Angels has, to some degree, an input or a different input in what kind of service do they want to provide into that city. They're putting their transit dollars into it, but as long as the county was operating it, their ability to discuss where do we want stops to be, how successful are those stops, hasn't really been there. And now it's going to be there again. And if they decide that they want an additional stop somewhere, then they can be part of that conversation.
Or to move a stop from here to there.
Exactly. And we have to realize, too, is that the majority of the hotels and motels are where? In Angels Camp. This number 2 spot is Murphy's. So why can't we get some linking done where we take people that are going to stay overnight in Angels Camp and use the transit system to move them? Say they want to do wine tasting in Murphy's, but as you know, it's hard to park cars in Murphy's.
Yes.
So
and
why
also,
not,
if you're going to wine taste, we would like you to take the bus. Thank you.
Take the bus, exactly. So why not put this together and start thinking in those terms of let's say we want people to stay in Angels Camp, but they want to go skiing in Bear Valley. Let's get that put. We had one at one time. We had a ski bus at one time. So let's take advantage of those opportunities of where we can serve the transient population and build our TOT as a result of keeping our occupancy rates as high as possible through joint venture, and realize that it isn't just the City of Angels Camp, it's not just the County of Calaveras, it's the sphere of influence that we have over the whole picture. And if there's something going on like a Hot August Nights or a Lions Club car show down in Copper, then let's get them sited. We have no place for them to stay overnight in Copperopolis. Site them in Angels Camp. Allow them to run a bus down there, enjoy their day, and not be burdened by that twisty, windy road
and
going to Copperopolis.
The twisty, windy roads. Twisty, windy road. How goes our highway for realignment? Near and dear to my heart.
They are in the process of doing land procurement on it this year, and the schedule is set to construct, barring anything unusual, 2021. And it will be basically from Appaloosa all the way down to where it widens there at Anderson's there in Copperopolis, towards Copperopolis. But it will take that whole area and clean it up for once and for all. We're also working on 2 bridges in Copperopolis area. That's in Diamond 20. One is the Upper Stagecoach Bridge, which will be set to construct. That's the low water crossing at the upper end. Set to construct this year. And the Single Tree Bridge, which is a key component, that's also on the north side.
I don't think about that.
That bridge went out in a flood, and it just never was really put back. But there is toll and bridge money available. And so the low water crossing will be done at about a $60,000 cost to the residents there, and the Single Tree Bridge will be done at no cost. Now, we recently had some problems last year with storm damage on South Horseshoe, and I said immediately we need to get this damage included in the FEMA declaration, which we did. So all of the repair work necessary to bring it back to standard is at no charge to the residents there. We got that taken care of.
That's a good one.
And then the other thing I'm working on is the left turn pocket at Poker Flat on O'Byrne's Ferry. It's been a very dangerous spot. It's been ongoing now since 1996. And the residents of Poker Flat put $60,000 towards that project, expected it to get it done, and it never got done. Well, believe it or not, PG&E, probably in the next few months, will begin moving the poles in anticipation of widening and putting in the turn pocket there at Poker Flat. So
that's a rough little spot right there.
We're not sitting on our hands. These issues come up, and when they do come up, we do our best to address them in real time.
Well, and it's nice to have the funding available to address them in real time.
Absolutely.
Especially when people in the community have put their own money.
So you're familiar with SB 1?
Yeah.
And that's the one that people really don't like, the idea of the gas tax. But each supervisor sat down and said, "Where are the priorities? I'd love to take care of some cul-de-sacs. I'm looking at Signal Hill Trail, and there's many places in Copperopolis that probably need immediate attention. But we decided to set it up as priorities, and we have to say how many vehicles per day. How important is this to the overall safety in the community?
How many accidents?
And there's all of those drivers. So when I looked at the total picture, and I just went over this with Public Works just a couple of days ago, the entire repaving of O'Byrne's Ferry Road, as you recall, in the spring storms, it turned into a game of dodgeball just running down there. In fact, we had one area that literally we had to rebuild or reconstruct the entire section of O'Byrne's Ferry because of there were people with getting flat tires and bent rims and everything over it. So that is a $1.2 million project to do that. Well, do we have that to just pull a rabbit out of a hat? We will over time, over the SB1. So we're looking at what is a 1-year project and what is a 2-year, what could be done in 5 years based upon what we would bring in under SB1 or other funding.
The funding for the realignment, not from SB1.
No, it's not.
Previous money already allotted to us.
In fact, there's also other funding that is available because we have a U.S. Forest above us. That, believe it or not, there's even federal money that's engaged in this. So every year we do ask for that money, and they do give it to us. We just add it to the pool for the realignment of Wagon Trail, and we just keep going until such time as we start digging dirt. I'm also on the COG board, the Council of Governments board, and so I'm very familiar with the projects about the county, and I want to tell everyone, if you think that your particular road is the most important, okay, and it usually is to you, I have to look at it in a broader sense, that I have to trust those people at Public Works that they know where they need to make the best use of the money to minimize the impacts for the longer term. So if we're going to be spending money, for instance, in District 2, it's because if we do that now, it's not going to create a bigger burden further down the road. And I would just assume we take care of culverts, we take care of ditches, and take care of some of the critical infrastructure pieces now that will help us get down 30 and 40 years down the road than to be stuck with taking care of some little pet project over here or there. So I have to think of this in a county-wide perspective, not just my own district. And even though I'd love to have everything done in my district, I could think of Hunt Road as an example.
Yeah, okay. That's a flat tire favorite.
You pull off a 4 on the Hunt Road, and that's got to be
it's a rough ride.
A rough ride.
It's a rough ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those of us who live here, we know it's a rough ride. Right? We know we're going to get when you go down Hunt Road.
But it is something that I'm plugging into the list.
We wouldn't say no if you want to pave over Hunt Road smooth. We won't say no.
Right.
Okay, so we got just a few minutes left, so I have to bring up. Yeah.
Wow.
We're just trotting along, as we do.
There's so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. People want to talk about the M word.
Okay.
I'm going to just put it in those terms. The ban is in place.
It is.
We're looking for compliance. I want to say, I talked to Rick again, I think June is compliance date, June 1st, or June 3rd is somewhere in June.
Yeah. Understand that when this whole subject came up, and I've been attending board meetings well before I got elected. And I said, you know what, let's do our homework. Let's do our research. Let's ask people what they know. And so I'm talking to academia. I'm talking to people from the U.S. Forest Service on the phone saying, you're out there doing it. What are you finding? And that's how I ended up doing that white paper. And I don't think there's ever been a supervisor in the history of Calaveras County that's done a white paper or some kind of a study to help support a decision on a board matter. And so it's kind of a first.
Not that I could think of.
And the result is that I would stand on that study, because it isn't just my thoughts. It's, I even asked the sheriff, what kind of chemicals are you finding out here on these eradication? I went out on eradication. I've been on sites post-eradication to say, how do we mitigate? How do we clean up the environment? How do we keep the watershed, which is a principal area for the state of California, to supply clean drinking water to the rest of the state? How do we guarantee that stays clean? That's our job.
Right. And again, Rick is, he's to protect and serve. He's to enforce laws. So
correct.
If this is the county's position, then Rick's job is to enforce that position. I know the 4 guys are coming out. He's going to have 4 additional, I guess I'll use employees. Yeah. Deputies, if you would.
Right.
He seemed to think, we talked about, course of action. He's just like, one step at a time.
Exactly.
We'll go through and look for the biggest offenders first, as they have been doing.
But to identify, remember that
as they have been doing.
This has been growing.
Biggest offenders.
This stuff has been growing, in the county now for decades. There's families that have been doing it for decades. But understand, too, that those families had a tie to the land. They had a responsibility to the land. It was family land. But what came in here in 2014 and 15.
After the Butte Fire, especially.
Yes. They didn't have that same connection.
True.
And as a pilot, I can tell you, flying over it, I literally watched the denuding of the landscape, the deforestation, the conversion of land from timberland or brushland, and the wildlife habitat just literally go away. And it's hard when you put that and couple that together with the silting, the runoff from the Butte Fire. Suddenly you've got a disaster on your hands, and that's why I came up with that term, cultivating disaster. It isn't that is regulation an option? What are we capable of handling? And I think that's the question Gary Tofanelli had, what is our capacity to handle? And working within that framework, then, don't put your staff in a position where they're literally overwhelmed. And I think we overwhelmed them.
Well, you don't want to put anyone in it where they're bound to fail because you give them a chore that they could not do.
Right, and you frustrate them, and you get turnover, and
it makes it difficult for them to live here, of course.
Right, and I got to say, we finally took a big step in getting the pay rates into line in the county. And it took a lot of hard discussion, but I think if we can find parity with our neighboring counties and show that our quality of life here is really the reason people live here.
It really is.
It is, and use that as a lever, because would you rather live in Tuolumne County? I mean, I have some ties to Tuolumne County, but I'd rather live in Calaveras. I'd rather live where I'm living. These communities are surrounded by some great people, and you are communities here. And I really desperately want everybody to understand that that's why you live here.
Dennis, I want to thank you for coming in. I see the clicking light there telling me I got to go away.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in again. That's your District 4 Supervisor, Dennis Mills. Thanks for coming to Inside View, everybody. We'll see you next week. Cheers.